Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Let's begin today's session of Bhagavad Gita Shloka recitation and Mahabharata reading. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapters 7, 8 and 9, Shloka recitation of the memorization shlokas. Okay, chapter 7, 7.1. Sri Bhagavanuvacha Maya Saktamanah Partha Yogam Yunjanmadashrayah Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yatha Gyasyasi Tachrinu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. 7.2 Jnanam te hamsa vijnanam idam vakshyamya sheshatah yajgyatva neha bhuyonyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. I shall now declare unto you this knowledge in full. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. 7.3 Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatataamapi siddhanam kaschin mam vetti tattvataha. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. 7.4 Bhutapo nalo vayuh kammano buddhireva cha ahankara iti yamme bhinna prakritirashtadha. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence and false ego, all together these 8 comprise my separated material energies. 7.5 Apareyam itastvanyam prakritim vidhi me param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam dharyate jagat. Besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. 7.6 Etadyonini bhutani sarvanityupadharaya aham kritsnasya jagataha prabhavaha pralayastatha. All created beings have their source in these two natures. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. 7.7 Mattaha parataram nanyad kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam protam sutre manigana iva. O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. 7.8 Rasohamapsu kaunteya प्रभास्मि शशिसूर्ययोः प्रणवः सर्ववेदेषु शब्दः खे पौरुषं नृषु. O son of Kunti, I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I am the sound in ether and ability in man. 710. बीजं मां सर्वभूतानां विद्धि पार्थ सनातनं बुद्धिमतामस्मि तेजस्तेजस्विनामहम्. O son of Pritha, know that I am the original seed of all existences, the intelligence of the intelligent, and the prowess of all powerful men. 711. Balam balavatam chaham kamaraga vivarjitam dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshabha. I am the strength of the strong, devoid of passion and desire. I am sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. O Lord of the Bharatas, Arjuna. 712. Ye chaiva satvika bhava rajasastamasascha ye matta eveti tan vidhi natvaham teshu te mayi. Know that all states of being, be they of goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of material nature, for they are, on the contrary, are within me. 713. त्रिभिर्गुणमयैर्भावैर् एभिः सर्वमिदं जगत् मोहितं नाभिजानाति मामेभ्यः परमव्ययम्. Deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. 714. Daivi hyesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mame vaye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. 715. Namam dushkritino moodha prapadyante naradhamaha mayaya pahrita jnana asuram bhavamashritah. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. 716. Chaturvidha bhajante mam janah sukritinarjuna arto jigyasur artharthi jnani cha bharatarshabha. O best among the Bharatas, four kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. 717. तेषां ज्ञानी नित्ययुक्ता एकभक्तिर्विशिष्यते प्रियो हि ज्ञानिनोत्यर्थम् अहं सा च मम प्रियः. Of these, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best, for I am very dear to him and he is dear to me. 719. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudevah sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabhaha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. 720. कामैस्तैस्तैर्हृतज्ञानाः प्रपद्यन्तेऽन्यदेवताः तं तं नियमम् आस्थाय प्रकृत्या नियता स्वया. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. 722. सतया श्रद्धया युक्तस्तस्याराधनमीहते लभते च ततः कामान् मयैवाभिहितान् हितान्. Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires. but in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. 723. Antavattu phalam tesham tadbhavatyalpamedhasam devan devayajo yanti madbhakta yanti mamapi. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits and are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. 724. अव्यक्तं व्यक्तिमापन्नं मन्यन्ते मामबुद्धयः परं भावम् अजानन्तो ममाव्ययम् अनुत्तमम्. Unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. 725. नाहं प्रकाशः सर्वस्य योगमाया समावृतः मूढोऽयं नाभिजानाति लोको मामजमव्ययम्. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. 726. Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu vedana kaschana. O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me no one knows. 727. इच्छाद्वेषसमुत्थेन द्वन्द्वमोहेन भारत सर्वभूतानि सम्मोहं सर्गे यान्ति परन्तप. O Scion of Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities, arisen from desire and hate. 728. येषां त्वन्तगतं पापं जनानां पुण्यकर्मणां ते द्वन्द्वमोहनिर्मुक्ता bhajante mam dridhavrataः. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Chapter 8, 8.5. अन्तकाले च मामेव स्मरन् मुक्त्वा कलेवरं यः प्रयाति समद्भावं याति नास्त्यत्र संशयः. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body remembering me alone at once attains my nature, of this there is no doubt. 8.6. यं यं वापि स्मरन् भावं त्यजत्यन्ते कलेवरं तं तं एवैति कौन्तेय सदा तद्भावभावितः. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. 8.7. तस्मात् सर्वेषु कालेषु मामनुस्मर युध्य च मयि अर्पिता मनो बुद्धिर् मामे वैश्यस्य संशयः. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. 8.8. अभ्यासयोगयुक्तेन चेतसा नान्यगामिना परमं पुरुषं दिव्यं याति पार्थानुचिन्तयन्. He who meditates on me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, O Partha, O Partha, is sure to reach me. 8.14. अनन्यचेताः सततं यो मां स्मरति नित्यशः तस्याहं सुलभः पार्थ नित्ययुक्तस्य योगिनः. For one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. 8:15 मामुपेत्या पुनर्जन्म दुःखालयम् अशाश्वतं नाप्नुवन्ति महात्मानः संसिद्धिं परमां गताः. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world which is full of miseries because they have attained the highest perfection. 8:16 आब्रह्मभुवनाल्लोकाः पुनरावर्तिनोऽर्जुन मामुपेत्य तु कौन्तेय पुनर्जन्म न vidyate. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. 8:17 सहस्रयुगपर्यन्तम् अहर्यद्भ्रमणो विदुः रात्रिं युगसहस्रान्तां तेहोरात्रविदो जनाः. One correction here, it's not vidhuhu, it is viduhu, right? To know, viduhu, like vidwan, it's not viduhu. Mistake, typo. सहस्रयुगपर्यन्तम् अहर्यद्भ्रमणो विदुः रात्रिं युगसहस्रान्तां तेहोरात्रविदो जनाः. By human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together form the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. 8:19 भूतग्रामः स एवायं भूत्वा भूत्वा प्रलीयते रात्र्यागमे वशः पार्थ प्रभवत्यः रागमे. Again and again, when Brahma's day arrives, all living entities come into being, and with the arrival of Brahma's night, they are helplessly annihilated. 8:20 परस्तस्मात्तु भावोऽन्यो व्यक्तो व्यक्तात् सनातनः यः स सर्वेषु भूतेषु नश्यत्सु न विनश्यति. Yet there is another unmanifest nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. 8:21 अव्यक्तोऽक्षर इत्युक्तस्तम् आहुः परमां गतिं यं प्राप्य न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम. That which the Vedantists describe as unmanifest and infallible, that which is known as the supreme destination, that place from which, having attained it, one never returns, that is my supreme abode. 8:28 वेदेषु यज्ञेषु तपस्सु चैव दानेषु यत् पुण्यफलं प्रदिष्टम् अत्येति तत्सर्वमिदं विदित्वा योगी परं स्थानमुपैति चाद्यम्. Isha and Rasapriya, what are you doing? Are you reciting? Okay. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service, he attains all these, and at the end, he reaches the supreme eternal abode. Chapter 9, 9:1 श्रीभगवानुवाच इदं तु ते गुह्यतमं प्रवक्ष्याम्यनसूयवे ज्ञानं विज्ञानसहितं यज्ञात्वा मोक्षसे शुभात्. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. 9:2 राजविद्या राजगुह्यं पवित्रम् इदमुत्तमं प्रत्यक्षावगमं धर्म्यं सुसुखं कर्तुमव्ययम्. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. 9.3 Ashraddhadhana Purusha Dharmasyasya Parantapa Aprapyamam Nivartante Mrityu Samsara Vartmani. Those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore, they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. 9.4 मया ततमिदं सर्वं जगद् अव्यक्तमूर्तिना मत्स्थानि सर्वभूतानि न चाहं तेष्वस्थितः. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. 9.5 न च मत्स्थानि भूतानि पश्य मे योगमैश्वरम् भूतभृन्न च भूतस्थो ममात्मा भूतभावनः. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not a part of this cosmic manifestation, for myself is the very source of creation. 9.10 मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः सूयते सचराचरं हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय जगद्विपरिवर्तते. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. 9.11 अवजानन्ति मां मूढा मानुषीं तनुमाश्रितं परं भावम् अजानन्तो मम भूता महेश्वरम्. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. 9.12 मोघाशामोघकर्माणो मोघज्ञानाविचेतसः राक्षसीमासुरीं चैव प्रकृतिं मोहिनीं श्रिताः. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demonic and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. 9.13 महात्मानस्तु मां पार्थ दैवीं प्रकृतिमाश्रिताः भजन्त्यनन्यमनसो ज्ञात्वा भूतादिमव्ययम्. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. 9.14 सततं कीर्तयन्तो मां यतन्तश्च दृढव्रताः नमस्यन्तश्च मां भक्त्या नित्ययुक्ता उपासते. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. 9.17 पिताहमस्य जगतो माता धाता पितामहः वेद्यं पवित्रम् ओंकार ऋक्सामा यजुरेव च. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, the Sama, and the Yajur Vedas. 9.21 ते तं भुक्त्वा स्वर्गलोकं विशालं क्षीणे पुण्ये मर्त्यलोकं विशन्ति एवं त्रयी धर्ममनुप्रपन्ना गतागतं कामकामा लभन्ते. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. 9.22 अनन्याश्चिन्तयन्तो मां ये जनाः पर्युपासते तेषां नित्याभियुक्तानां yogakshemam vahamyaham. But those who worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. 923. येऽप्यन्यदेवता भक्त्या यजन्ते श्रद्धयान्विताः sorry भक्ता once again येऽप्यन्यदेवता भक्ता यजन्ते श्रद्धयान्विताः तेऽपि मामेव कौन्तेय यजन्त्यविधिपूर्वकम्. Those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. 924. Aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhurev cha natu mam abhijananti tatvena tascha vantite. I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. 925. Yanti deva vrata devan pitrin yanti pitrivrataha bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhyajinopi mam. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me. 926. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tad aham bhaktyupahritam ashnami prayatatmanaha. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit or water, I will accept it. 927. Yat karoshi yad ashnasi yad juhoshi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. 929. Samoham sarvabhuteshu न मे द्वेषोऽस्ति न प्रियः ये भजन्ति तु मां भक्त्या मयि तेषु चाप्यहम्. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. 930. अपि चेत् सुदुराचारो भजते मामनन्यभाक् साधुरेव समन्तव्यः सम्यग् व्यवसितो हि सः. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. 931. क्षिप्रं भवति धर्मात्मा शश्वच्छान्तिं निगच्छति कौन्तेय प्रतिजानीहि न मे भक्तः प्रणश्यति. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. 932. मां हि पार्थ व्यपाश्रित्य येऽपि स्युः पापयोनयः स्त्रियो वैश्यास्तथा शूद्रास् तेऽपि यान्ति परां गतिम्. O son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas and Shudras, can attain the supreme destination. 933. Kim punar brahmana punya bhakta rajarshayasthatha anityam asukham lokam imam prapya bhajasva mam. How much more this is so of the righteous Brahmanas, the devotees, and the saintly kings. Therefore, having come to this temporary miserable world, engage in loving service unto me. 934. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi suyuktvaivam atmanam madparayanaha. Engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me, and worship me. Being fully absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. End of chapter 9. Well, end of all memorization shlokas. Let's read Mahabharata now. Just give me 1 second, I'll be back. Okay, so let's read Mahabharata. What did we do yesterday? We read, okay, anyone remembers? Yes, Rasapriya.
We learned about Arjun's exile.
Arjun's exile, okay. Madhava?
The burning of the Kanda forest and
Burning of the Khandava forest.
and also what's his name? The deep and Mayadanava also being spared by Arjun.
Mayadanava is spared by Arjun. Okay. Anyone else would like to add anything more? Okay, so I'll just tell you. Okay, more. Rasapriya, go ahead.
How Arjun delivered the 5 alligators. The
5 alligators. Yeah, crocodiles. Okay. So Arjun and the Pandavas were in Indraprastha, and they decided, they set a rule how they are going to associate with Draupadi, and if anybody intruded the privacy, then what is the punishment, so on and so forth. So we saw how once a Brahmana, when Yudhisthira Maharaj was with Draupadi, it was Yudhisthira Maharaj's time. At that time, one Brahmana came to the palace, and his cows were stolen by some thieves. So he was begging for help. So Arjun, his weapons were kept in Yudhishthir Maharaj's room. So he went there to get the weapons, and of course he saved the cows. But then he came back and he said, according to the condition, I must go to the forest, go into exile for 1 year. And so then when so Arjun went into exile. So what was the path that he took? he went north towards Himalayas, following the Ganges. So he would walk on the banks of the Ganges, and then he would go to all places of pilgrimage. And he was accompanied by Brahmins and also by servants carrying a lot of wealth with him to be distributed in charity. So we saw how he met with Ulupi at one place, and then again from north he went east, and there he went to the kingdom of Manipur, and there he married Chitrangada. And then further, so when he met Ulupi, he said that, or she told him that she would meet him again when he went back to Indraprastha. And then he stayed in Manipur for 3 months after marrying Chitrangada. And when she became pregnant, then he said he will call her after he goes back to Indraprastha. Then he went south, and there were 5 lakes. Anyone who takes bath in those lakes, he would be delivered. But there were these crocodiles that were, attacking anyone who went into that lake, anyone who went to take bath in that lake. So Ulupi had given a benediction to Arjun that he would be able to defeat any aquatics underwater. So using that benediction, Arjun actually brought that, he pulled that crocodile out and he dashed it against the ground, and out came a beautiful Apsara, and they told their history. So from there again he went west, he went to Dwaraka, and there we saw how Arjun married Subhadra, and with Krishna's help. And after marrying Subhadra, then he stayed in Dwaraka for some time, and from there he went back to Indraprastha with Subhadra. And also we saw how he introduced Subhadra to Draupadi. So I think, after this, Krishna also came to Indraprastha to bring gifts for the Pandavas, and Krishna stayed back for some time. So once Krishna and Arjun went for a walk in the Khandava forest, and one Brahmana, who actually was Agni, he came there, and he said he was hungry, and he was asking for help, Krishna and Arjun's help, to eat the forest. So then he explained how there was one yagya that was performed, and in that yagya he ate a lot of ghee was offered. So by eating all that ghee, he had some indigestion. So therefore he had to eat the Khandava forest, because in the Khandava forest there were many herbs that could actually cure that indigestion. So then Arjun he said, I have divyastras, I have celestial weapons, but I don't have a strong bow to use my arrows. So then Agni said, don't worry, I will provide you. So he gave him a chariot with excellent horses, and then he gave a bow and also an inexhaustible quiver of arrows. 35 minutes. And then after this, and Krishna, he gave Krishna also Sudarshan Chakra. So he summoned Varuna. So Varuna got all these weapons for Krishna and Arjun. So using those weapons, then he said, yes, go ahead, and you can eat the forest. So Agni was blazing in the Khandava forest, and Krishna said, I will drive the chariot, and Arjun was going to shoot the arrows. And they went around the Khandava forest. The problem was Agni he could have just burned the forest himself, but Indra was intervening. Indra's friend Takshaka lived in this forest, and he wanted to save his friend. He didn't want his friend to get burnt. So that's why he was not allowing Agni to burn the forest. So Agni wanted protection from Indra. He would rain, he would send rains which would put out the fire. So Agni was not able to eat that forest. So now Krishna and Arjun, they went around the forest at such high speed. Of course, there was a battle. Indra came with all the demigods, and Arjun defeated all of them. And Indra actually felt proud that, it was his son. So anyway, finally Lord Brahma's voice was heard, who said that you cannot defeat them. This is, the Supreme Lord and Narayan. So how can you defeat them? So forget it. You go back, like that. And just before that, Takshaka was not there in the forest at that time, but his wife and son were there. So when everything was just burning, his wife tried to escape along with her son. So Arjun shot an arrow and killed Takshaka's wife. But when he was about to kill the son, uh, wind god, I think, right? He sent such a heavy wind that Arjun, for a moment he lost. I don't know. He that Ashwasena is the son of Takshaka. He escaped in that fraction of a second. So that's how he was saved. So there was this another Mayadanava also in the forest. He was trying to escape, but what he did was he went and took shelter of Arjun to save him. Otherwise, Krishna's Sudarshan Chakra was there to kill anyone who was trying to escape. But Mayadanava took shelter of Arjun to give protection. So according to Dharma, Arjun gave him protection even from Krishna. So in exchange for that, he wanted to do something. Arjun didn't accept anything, but he said, if you really want to give something, you do something to please Krishna. Krishna said, you build a nice assembly hall for the Pandavas. Mayadanava, he was an architect actually. So he said, okay. But all the materials that he needed, they were somewhere in the Himalayas. He said, let me go and collect them first, and then I will begin my work. So he went there and he got all the, precious jewels and stones and whatever he needed that he had saved there. And then also apart from that, he got Bhimsen's Gada and Arjun's conch, Devadatta, and he gave them as gifts. So I think that's where we stopped. We'll continue from there today. Chapter 15, the Celestial Hall. Soon after Maya began his work on the hall, Krishna approached Yudhisthira and asked his permission to return to Dwaraka. He had been away for months and now desired to again see his relatives. Yudhishthir gave his permission reluctantly, knowing he would miss his beloved friend. Krishna then said his farewells, first going to Kunti and touching her feet in respect. Shedding tears, Kunti embraced Krishna and said, my dear Keshava, you are the supreme soul of this universe. You are always kindly disposed toward everyone, but you especially protect your devotees. From the day that Akrura arrived in Hastinapur, I knew you were thinking of the welfare of myself and my sons. I am confident that whatever difficulties we may experience are arranged by Providence for our ultimate good. Kunti Maharani, remember, after Krishna came to Dwaraka, he sent Akrura to find out what's going on in Hastinapur. So Kunti Maharani is remembering that. And she said, when Akrura came, I understood that you are always thinking about us. Then whatever is happening in our life, it is only happening for our good. It's happening by the arrangement of Providence. Krishna smiled at Kunti and then left her, promising that he would return before long. He then went to see his sister Subhadra and bid her an affectionate farewell. After that, Krishna went to Draupadi, who cried at the thought of his departure. Like her husbands and mother-in-law, Draupadi thought constantly of Krishna. She bowed at his feet and worshipped him, praying that he might soon return. After performing the due rites of departure and after offering charity to the Brahmins, Krishna mounted his chariot along with Satyaki, who had remained with him in Indraprastha to learn archery from Arjun. So Satyaki is a student of Arjun in archery. Surrounded by the 5 Pandavas, Krishna looked like Indra surrounded by the gods. He proceeded slowly along the royal highway toward the city gate. Thousands of citizens lined the streets, shouting and waving as Krishna departed in his chariot, drawn by Shaibya and Sugriva, the same horses that Krishna gave Arjun to take Subhadra. So Krishna is going on his chariot drawn by Shaibya and Sugriva and bearing the sign of Garuda. Yudhishthir mounted the chariot and personally took the reins. So Yudhishthir became the chariot driver of Krishna. Arjun stood on the chariot fanning Krishna with a golden-handled chamara whisk. Bhima held a white parasol over Krishna's head, and Nakul and Sahadev walked ahead on either side of his chariot, clearing the way. The Pandavas accompanied Krishna out of the city for 4 miles, like sending him off. Krishna then told them to return home. He bowed to Yudhisthira, who tearfully raised him and said with affection, "My dear Krishna, I do not know what kind of pious activities we must have performed in previous lives, so that you are now so gracious toward us. Even highly renounced yogis and mystics attain a sight of you only with great difficulty. Yet we are householders engaged in politics and worldly affairs. I do not understand why you are so kind to us." Krishna smiled and asked Yudhishthir if he could leave for Dwaraka. May I now go back to Dwaraka? Krishna is asking. Yudhishthir assented, and with great difficulty, Krishna persuaded the Pandavas not to follow him. So they just kept following him. After saying goodbye, they just kept following him. So Krishna said, "Please go back." He told them that he would always be ready to assist them whenever they needed him. They need only think of him. Krishna then urged his horses onwards, and the 5 brothers stood together, gazing at his chariot as it disappeared into the distance. So they were all on the same chariot as Krishna's, right? Yudhishthir was the chariot driver, Arjun, Bhimsen were on the chariot, Nakul, Sahadev on either side, like that. They were going with Krishna. Finally, they got off, and then Krishna went ahead. They then slowly returned to Indraprastha, their minds absorbed in thoughts of their friend from Dwaraka. A few days after Krishna left, Maya, having completed all his designs and plans, began his actual construction. On an auspicious day, marked by favorable stars, the Asura measured out a piece of land 5,000 cubits square. 5,000 cubits square. Before commencing work, he distributed charity to thousands of Brahmins. So always, whenever they would start any work, they would give charity to Brahmins to invoke auspiciousness. So before building the Maya Sabha, he distributed charity to thousands of Brahmins. He arranged for them to be fed with the finest of foods and gave them wealth, invoking their blessings before he began. Maya then erected thousands of golden pillars, upon which he constructed a splendorous assembly hall. So he had golden pillars, and on top of the pillars, he had this assembly hall. After 14 months, the hall was completed. It appeared like a mass of new clouds rising in the sky, and its celestial effulgence seemed to darken the sun's rays. It was spacious, cool, delightful, and filled with wealth. With its golden walls and archways inlaid with celestial gems, and its crystal stairways worked with coral, the hall surpassed even the Yadu's Sudharma hall, which was built by Vishwakarma. In its center was a beautiful artificial pond filled with lotuses and lilies whose stalks were made of brilliant gems. So they were not real. The lotuses and lilies, their stalks were made of brilliant gems, and with other flowers and leaves made of gold and silver. On its clear waters, there were also real lotuses in full blossom. So there were these flowers made with gems, but also mixed with real flowers. Swans, karandavas, and chakravarkas swam about on its surface, and golden colored turtles played on its bottom. The sides of the pond were set with costly marble slabs studded with pearls, and all around it were celestial flowers shivering in a gentle breeze. The hall, all this is inside the hall. The hall was adorned with gardens full of ever blossoming trees. In the hall, there were trees and gardens, and the air was filled with a delicious fragrance that mixed with the scent of the lotuses on the lake. Maya arranged for 8,000 powerful Rakshasas, known as Kinkaras, to guard that hall. Keeping themselves invisible, the well armed Rakshasas, who had massive bodies and fearful faces, arrow shaped ears. This is another thing. All Rakshasas, they have arrow shaped ears. And blood red eyes, stationed themselves all around the hall, ever alert to danger, but they were invisible. Others were not able to see them, but they were stationed all around the hall, ever alert to danger. The Asura then reported to Yudhishthir that the hall was ready for occupation. Yudhishthir consulted with the Brahmins and selected an auspicious day to enter the hall. He fed and gave charity to thousands of Brahmins, again, before entering, and along with his brothers, worshipped Vishnu and the gods. A ceremony was arranged, and actors, bards, singers, and wrestlers exhibited their skill for the Pandavas' pleasure. A feast was then distributed to all of Indraprastha's citizens. Precisely at noon, the Pandavas, followed by crowds of rishis, entered their hall through the enormous golden doors at its eastern entrance. They took their places on the jewel-encrusted thrones at the head of the main hall. Around them sat the rishis and many kings who had been invited from other countries. In that assembly were seen numerous famous rishis such as Asita, Devala, Vyasdev, Maitreya, Parvata, Markandeya, Jaimini, Brigu, and hundreds of others. All the virtuous sages had their mind and senses under full control, and they looked like so many full moons shining amid the assembly. The Pandavas listened respectfully as the rishis recited Vedic histories to invoke auspiciousness. The kings in attendance then stepped forward one by one to make offerings to Yudhishthir and to worship him with all honor. Chitrasena, the Gandharva's leader, arrived with the Apsaras. Along with the Charanas descended from the heavens, they entertained the assembly with celestial music and dance. Worshipped and entertained by such beings, Yudhishthir resembled Brahma seated in his own hall on the highest planet in the universe. So Yudhishthir Maharaj looked like Brahmaji. Suddenly, the Pandavas saw Narad Rishi appear by his mystical power, dressed in a black deer skin, with his golden hair knotted on top of his head. He seemed like a brilliant sun rising in the hall. Yudhishthir and his brothers immediately stood in respect. They bowed low to Narada, who was accompanied by Parijata, Raivata, and Sumukha, three other powerful sages. Yudhishthir offered all the rishis seats, and they sat peacefully as the Pandava worshipped them with sacred offerings as well as with precious gems and jewels. Gratified, the sages were joyous to behold the wonderful assembly hall. Narada said, "O king, is your wealth being spent properly for the protection of the people? Is your mind fixed in virtue? Are you enjoying the pleasures of life? I trust that you do not sacrifice religion for the sake of profit, nor profit for the sake of religion, nor indeed both religion and profit for the sake of pleasure, each which easily tempts men." What tempts men? Pleasure. So for the sake of pleasure, I hope you are not sacrificing both religion and profit. Narada continued to question Yudhishthir on a variety of subjects, his questions effectively constituting a number of instructions on the art of kingship. Yudhishthir sat with folded palms and listened attentively. The entire assembly remained silent as Narada, the foremost of the rishis, spoke. His knowledge and wisdom were famed throughout the universe. Narada was fully acquainted with every aspect of the Vedic teachings, and he was renowned as a great devotee and servant of the Supreme Lord. He knew the Lord's desire, and his movements and actions were always arranged to assist the divine plan. The Pandavas were reverent as he instructed them. The whole aim of the monarch, Narada explained, was to keep his people on the path of progressive spiritual life, helping them advance toward life's ultimate goal of emancipation, while ensuring that they were protected and had all their material needs provided. As Narada finished his instructions, Yudhishthir thanked him and said, "O great sage, you have asked me if my study of scripture, my wealth, and my marriage are all successful. Please tell me how I can succeed in these things." Narada, who had ended his speech with those three questions, replied, "Scriptural knowledge is successful when it results in humility and good conduct." Important. Scriptural knowledge is successful when it results in humility and good conduct. Wealth is successful when it is both enjoyed and given away in charity. And marriage is successful when the wife is enjoyed and bears offspring. Concluding his instructions, the Rishi said, "O great king, be sure that you are always free of the 5 evils which assail men." What are those 5 evils? Excessive sleep, fear, anger, weakness of mind, and procrastination. 5 evils that always assail men are excessive sleep, fear, anger, weakness of mind, and procrastination. Yudhishthira again bowed to Narada and took hold of his feet, saying, "I shall surely do all that you have said. My knowledge has been increased by your wise words." Yudhishthira replied in detail to all of Narada's questions. When he finished, the sage blessed him by saying, "That king who properly performs his duties will pass his days in happiness, and at the end of his life, he surely ascends to the regions of heavenly happiness." Yudhishthira became curious to learn from Narada about the assembly halls possessed by the gods. He wondered if there were any equal to the one Maya had built for him. In the presence of the many kings and sages in his hall, Yudhishthira asked, "O great Rishi, you can travel with the speed of the mind and go anywhere within the universe. Please tell me of all the assembly halls you have seen. Do any of them equal mine?" The Pandava asked Narada to describe in detail the other halls as well as who was to be found in them, who waited upon Indra in his hall, and who upon Yamaraj, which fortunate souls attended Brahma in his hall. Yudhishthir's enquiry was pointed. He wanted to know where his ancestors, the great kings of the past, had gone. He was especially eager to hear of his father Pandu. Had Pandu attained the highest heaven? Yudhishthir waited expectantly for Narada to reply. Narada described the great halls belonging to all the principal gods, beginning with that of Indra. Indra's hall is 150 yojanas long, so 1 yojana is 8 miles, more than 1,000 miles, and 100 yojanas wide, and it shines with the splendor of the sun. It is capable of dispelling grief, fatigue, fear, and weakness. Indra sits there in a magnificent ethereal form, adorned with a brilliant crown and bracelets, and wearing effulgent white robes. He is decorated with celestial garlands of many hues. By his side sits personified beauty, fame, and glory. Narada named all the rishis and other personalities who wait upon the king of the gods. Faith, intelligence, and learning are all present in his court, as are sacrifice, charity, religion, profit, and pleasure. But there was only one earthly king from the past, the royal sage Harishchandra. Narada went on to describe Yamaraj's hall. His hall is a full 100 yojanas square and is delightful in every way. No pain of any kind exists within that hall, and it contains every object of desire, both celestial and human. It could travel anywhere in the universe according to its owner's will. The hall could travel. Time and death personified sit on either side of Yamaraj, and countless rishis surround him. Gandharvas and Apsaras entertain the occupants of the hall with music and dance. The scent of divine perfumes fills the air. Narada named the personalities who wait upon Yamaraj, which included all the monarchs in Yudhishthir's line, ending with Pandu. So they are all there in Yamaraj's assembly hall. Narada then described Varuna's hall and then that of Kuvera, the lord of wealth. Both those halls were opulent beyond imagination, being filled with gold and gems and inhabited by numerous gods and rishis and their shining consorts. Narada told Yudhisthira about Brahma's hall. The actual form of that mystical hall cannot be ascertained, as it can assume various indescribable forms from moment to moment. The hall is made of celestial gems which constantly change hue, and it appears to be suspended in the firmament by its own power. The self effulgent hall knows no deterioration, and it continuously increases the happiness of its occupants. Brahma sits there surrounded by the personified forms of mind. So, personified forms of mind, space, knowledge, sound, touch, form, taste, scent, nature. So, all these are personalities. All the elements and the prime causes of the universe. Present also are the sun, moon, all the stars and constellations, joy, aversion, asceticism, understanding, patience, wisdom, forgiveness, fortune, and all the Vedas. They're all sitting in Brahmaji's assembly hall. Yudhishthira and his brothers sat in rapt attention as Narada spoke about the immeasurable splendor and opulence of Brahma's hall. He named all the chief progenitors and all the principal gods and goddesses who waited upon Brahma. When Narada stopped speaking, Yudhishthir began to question him further. He wanted to know why only Harishchandra, out of all the great kings of the past, had attained to Indra's abode. He also wanted Narada to tell him about his meeting with Pandu. What did Pandu say to the sage? How was he faring now in Yamaraja's assembly? Narada explained that Harishchandra had reached Indra's planet because he had performed the great Rajasuya sacrifice. That's how Harishchandra reached Indra's assembly hall, because he performed the Rajasuya sacrifice. That sacrifice involved subjugating all other kings and distributing charity to hundreds of thousands of Brahmins, and it had set Harishchandra apart from the other kings. Narada then told Yudhishthir that Pandu had given him a message for his son. If Yudhishthir could also perform the Rajasuya, then both he and Pandu could reach Indra's kingdom. Pandu felt that his sons were now capable of performing such an incomparable sacrifice. If they were successful, then father and sons would be reunited in heaven. Both Narada and Pandu understood that the gods had their own purposes to fulfill through Yudhishthir's performance of the Rajasuya. It was part of a divine plan meant to free the world of demonic influences. There were presently many evil kings and kshatriyas inhabiting the earth. Before beginning the sacrifice, Yudhishthir would need to overpower them because he has to subdue all the kings. That means he'll have to defeat all these demoniac kings. Only then would he be able to perform the Rajasuya, and only then would he be able to establish piety and virtue throughout the world. Narada looked around at the five brothers who sat humbly before him. He knew they were dear to Krishna, who wanted to use them as instruments to fulfill his own desire to re-establish religion upon the earth. Narada concluded, therefore, O king, you should perform the Rajasuya sacrifice. The celestials have ordained it. I shall return when the sacrifice begins. Now I am going to Dwaraka, for I desire to see Krishna, under whose will this entire universe is moving. Narada stood up to leave, and Yudhishthir requested him to ask Krishna to again visit Indraprastha. Krishna had just left. He's saying, please tell Krishna to again visit Indraprastha. Narada agreed, and the Pandavas bowed before him and his companions. The rishis then disappeared into the sky by their mystic power. After Narada's departure, the Pandavas continued to live peacefully at Indraprastha. But Yudhishthir was contemplating how he might perform the Rajasuya sacrifice. He knew that it required vast wealth. It also necessitated his being able to establish his indisputable power over all other kings. How would it ever be possible? There were certain kings who would never accept him as their emperor. The mighty Jarāsandha of Magadha, for example. Jarāsandha was wicked, and he had already conquered all the districts surrounding his kingdom. Yudhishthir had even heard that Jarāsandha imprisoned the kings he defeated with the intention to sacrifice them to Shiva. Jarāsandha was ambitious. He already had designs on the emperor's seat. He wanted to become the emperor himself. and he was not an easy opponent to defeat. Yudhishthira realized that he would only be able to perform the Rajasuya with Krishna's help. Yudhishthira's kingdom was flourishing under his leadership, and his citizens were devoted to piety. They had everything they desired. The Pandavas saw the citizens as family. Yudhishthira was more than a father to them, and no one in the kingdom entertained any hostile feelings toward him. Gradually, he became known as Ajatashatru, one without an enemy. And due to his religious leadership, the gods were also pleased, and thus the kingdom was not afflicted by fire, disease, or other natural disturbances. Still thinking about the sacrifice, Yudhishthir called an assembly of ministers and advisors. When they were all seated in the great council chamber of the Pandavas' hall, which was called the Maya Sabha, Yudhishthir began to address them, his voice resounding like a bass drum. I wish to perform the Rajasuya. Having been asked to do so by the great sage Narada, I can understand that the gods must surely desire it. I do not want dominion over this earth for myself, but I wish to fulfill the gods' purpose, and especially that of the Supreme Lord. Yudhishthir also considered that if he invited Krishna to the sacrifice, he could arrange that he be honored as the chief person present. That would establish the Lord's fame and position all over the world. Krishna was superior to even the greatest gods such as Brahma and Shiva. Yudhishthira expected those gods to attend his sacrifice. So if people saw them worshipping Krishna as supreme, then his position above those deities would be established. Then Dhaumya spoke, O king, you are worthy to become the emperor of this world. Therefore perform this sacrifice and establish yourself as such. We shall light the 6 fires and chant the sacred mantras. But first, you must gain the acquiescence of the world's monarchs, right? Get their support, and they should accept you as their emperor. After that, you will surely become the undisputed king of this wide earth. Having gained the permission of his priest and counselors, Yudhishthira discussed the means by which he might proceed. They all agreed that he should immediately consult Krishna. Krishna would certainly provide infallible advice. Yudhishthira then thought of Krishna all the more intensely, praying that he might soon come to his assistance. Chapter 16, Mighty Jarasandha. One second. Mighty Jarasandha. After leaving Indraprastha, Krishna had traveled quickly back to Dwaraka. As he entered the city, he was greeted by his relatives, friends, and countless citizens. After approaching King Ugrasena to offer respects, Krishna saluted Balaram and then went to see his wives and sons. Finally, he entered the palace of his principal queen Rukmini to rest. During the coming months, he heard about the Pandavas' incomparable assembly hall. Remember, the assembly hall was not yet started. The construction had not yet started when Krishna left. He also heard that Subhadra's first son had been born and that they had named him Abhimanyu. Krishna was joyful to hear that the Pandavas were flourishing, and he began to desire to see them again. Each day, Krishna went to the Sudharma assembly hall to meet with the citizens. Vishwakarma, the architect of the gods, had constructed this hall, and it had the special quality of freeing those who entered it from the 6 kinds of material sufferings: hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. When Krishna entered the hall, he would bow before King Ugrasena, then take his seat on a bejeweled golden throne. Although not Dwaraka's king, Krishna was nevertheless respected as the most important person present. The city's inhabitants understood his divine status. They regarded him as their natural leader, especially after he had personally deposed the previous king Kamsa, Ugrasena's cruel son, and freed them from his reign of terror. Once everyone was settled in the hall, where is this? Sudharma Hall in Dwaraka. Jesters, dancers, and musicians were called out to entertain the Yadavas. Brahmins recited Vedic texts or chanted hymns and prayers, and one could hear the sounds of mridanga drums, flutes, and bells around the hall, as well as blasts of numerous conch shells. Krishna and Balaram enjoyed the various performances, and they resembled the sun and moon amid so many shining planets. One day, soon after Krishna had received news of the opening of the Mayasabha, a stranger arrived at the Sudharma hall. Krishna gave him permission to enter, and he stepped forward with folded palms. The man introduced himself as a king from a distant territory, one that Jarasandha had conquered. He explained how the Magadha king had become more and more aggressive, how he imprisoned the thousands of kings he conquered, and how he kept them in a wretched condition until he was ready to kill them. He had managed to escape. This man, somehow he was also captured by, defeated, and then captured and imprisoned by Jarasandha and kept in a wretched condition. Somehow this man managed to escape the prison and had come as a messenger on the other king's behalf. O Krishna, O Unlimited One, we beg you to deliver us from our miserable condition. Jarasandha is as powerful as 10,000 elephants. He has therefore been able to imprison us just as a lion captures a flock of sheep. You are the most powerful person and are always kindly disposed to those who seek your shelter. Therefore, please act for our good fortune. It was well known that Krishna had fought and defeated Jarasandha many times, but the evil monarch had somehow escaped with his life. Jarasandha hated Krishna for his killing of Kamsa. Kamsa was both Jarasandha's friend and his son-in-law. Both the daughters of Jarasandha were married to Kamsa. In an attempt to avenge Kamsa, Jarasandha had marched against the Yadus again and again at the front of a vast army, but each time his army had been destroyed and he had returned in shame to his kingdom to rebuild his forces, still burning with hatred for Krishna. Krishna looked compassionately at the messenger. As he was about to reply, Narad Rishi suddenly entered the hall. The sage came before Krishna, who immediately rose with his ministers to offer his heartfelt obeisances. Who rose? Krishna rose to offer his obeisances to Narada Muni. Krishna offered the sage a seat and personally worshipped him with argya. He then said, O sage among the gods, it is fortunate indeed that we see you here today. You are able to travel freely throughout the worlds, and therefore you know everything. Please tell us how the Pandavas are faring at present and what are Yudhishthira's plans. Krishna's question was significant. By his mystic power, he understood that Yudhishthira was desiring to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice, which would entail his having to conquer Jarasandha. Narada replied, My dear Lord, I know that nothing is beyond your knowledge, yet still you act like an ordinary man and question me. I can therefore tell you that Yudhishthira is as well established in his kingdom as Indra is in Amaravati. He now desires to perform the great Rajasuya sacrifice, and he is making the necessary preparations. Even now he is praying that you will go to Indraprastha and assist him. Indeed, he has asked me to come and invite you. Krishna thanked Narada for the information and turned to his chief advisor Uddhava. What should be done? Uddhava replied, It seems that you can achieve two things at once. By going to Indraprastha, You will both enable your cousin to perform the sacrifice and bring about Jarasandha's destruction, because this messenger had come asking for help. So you'll be able to destroy Jarasandha and help this person and the other kings who are in prison. And at the same time, you'll be able to help Yudhisthira perform Rajasuya. Jarasandha has now amassed such a large army that the only way we can defeat him is in a one-on-one encounter. Only one person is capable of facing him in hand-to-hand combat, Bhima. If Bhima approaches Jarasandha disguised as a Brahmin, then he can beg from him a fight. Jarasandha is famous for never refusing a Brahmin's request. My dear Krishna, you should accompany Bhima to Magadha. He will certainly be successful in the fight if you are there to guide him. The assembly voiced their approval. The Yadus had already been planning how to kill the belligerent Jarasandha. This seemed like a good solution. Thus Krishna agreed to go to Indraprastha. Reassuring the imprisoned king's messenger, he took permission from King Ugrasena and his father Vasudev to depart, then rose and left the assembly. Krishna decided to travel in state with all his family members to Indraprastha. So he had arranged the Yadus in a long procession around him. Amid the sounds of bugles, drums, trumpets, and conch shells, the party left Dwaraka on thousands of golden chariots adorned with jewels, silks, and flags. Soldiers armed with swords and lances and mounted upon great black horses protected them on all sides. The noble ladies proceeded in their palanquins. Behind them, bulls, mules, and asses carried supplies and paraphernalia for the long journey. Krishna and Rukmini traveled in the center of the procession on a chariot driven by Dwaraka and Jayatsena, his two personal servants. The party passed through the provinces of Anartha, Sauvira, and Kurukshetra. They crossed the rivers Drishadwati and Saraswati, and then passed through the districts of Panchala and Matsya. Finally, they arrived at the outskirts of Indraprastha and sent an advance party to inform the Pandavas that they would soon arrive. When Yudhisthira heard that Krishna had arrived, he cried out in joy. Along with his brothers, he immediately ran out of the city to greet him. He ordered the royal musicians to play and learned Brahmins to recite sacred hymns from the Vedas. The Pandavas then embraced Krishna with affection and led him into Indraprastha. Krishna saw that the city was festively decorated with festoons, streamers, and colorful garlands. Thousands of citizens crowded in the streets as he passed by with the Pandavas on his way to their palace. The procession of Yadavas following him moved with difficulty through the thick crowds. They were all led to the royal quarters by Indraprastha's chief citizens and leaders. After Krishna had rested and refreshed himself and his family had been settled, Yudhishthira approached him to discuss the Rajasuya. My dear Krishna, I desire to perform this sacrifice, but I wonder if I shall be successful. Please tell me what is best for me. I know you will never speak out of any motive other than for my welfare. Therefore, I shall depend entirely upon your words in deciding my course of action. Yudhishthira sat in his hall, surrounded by his brothers. An iridescent glow from the thousands of celestial gems set in the walls lit up their faces as they looked at Krishna, awaiting his advice. In the expectant silence of the hall, the soft murmur of Brahmins chanting hymns could be heard drifting in from nearby temples. Krishna sat peacefully with his hands in his lap. Maidservants adorned with bright gold ornaments fanned him gently with chamaras and fans made of peacock feathers. Turning to Yudhishthira, he said, You are fit in every way to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice and become the world emperor. But you will first have to overthrow the powerful Jarāsandha, who has formed a near invincible alliance with numerous other monarchs. He has extended his influence and control throughout the middle portion of the earth and has designs on the rest. He is the biggest stumbling block to your plans. Krishna then listed the names of the many kings subservient to Jarasandha. All were Krishna's enemies, and many of them had been defeated by him and Balaram in various battles over the years. Now they had come together under Jarasandha's leadership. With these kings united, their armies would be impossible to defeat. What then do you think should be done, O descendant of Kuru? How will you overpower Jarasandha? Bhima leaped to his feet. It would not be wise to send out an army to oppose Jarasandha in his own province. We should challenge him to single combat. I have the strength to defeat him, and you, Krishna, are expert in policy. Arjun always brings victory. Therefore, let us three go to Magadha and challenge him. I am confident of success. Krishna replied, This is my thought also. Indeed, the wise Uddhava advised me in the same way. I, for one, am prepared to accompany Bhima and Arjun to Magadha to bring about the sinful Jarasandha death. Okay, I am prepared to do this because I want to bring about the death of the sinful Jarasandha. That's my purpose. Yudhisthira was uncertain. He moved uneasily on his throne. How can I allow you to go on my behalf? He asked. How too can I risk the lives of Bhima and Arjun? They are my eyes and you are my mind, O Krishna. Bereft of any of you, I could not possibly continue to live. Do not go. I think that even Yamaraj would not be able to face Jarasandha. Pray, desist from this determination to fight with him. I shall give up my desire to perform the Rajasuya. It seems an impossible goal. Yudhishthir's voice was pleading. His love for Krishna overpowered any thought of Krishna's divinity and unassailable position. Yeah. Arjun then spoke. We are born in a race famous for its valor and prowess. How can we, like weak men, shrink back in fear of an enemy? We are Kshatriyas. Our duty is to fight, and if necessary, lay down our lives in battle. There can be no higher act for us than to fight Jarasandha and try to rescue the imprisoned kings. If we do not go, men shall revile us as worthless. Such dishonor would be worse than death. Krishna agreed. Arjun has shown the mood of one born in the Bharat race. We do not know when death will overtake us, nor have we heard that immortality has been ordained by desisting from battle. The wise have decreed that one should, by taking recourse in strength and policy, confront his enemies. Let us therefore encounter Jarasandha. Either we shall kill him, or being ourselves killed, ascend to heaven. Yudhishthira then became curious to know more of Jarasandha's history. Krishna explained that he had been born to King Brihadratha, a powerful ruler of Magadha, when a rishi had blessed the king to attain a son. The rishi had given Brihadratha a charmed mango to give it to his senior queen, but the king divided it into two so that both his queens might conceive. Both wives then gave birth to only half a child. The sorrowing queens threw the two halves into the forest, where a Rakshasa woman named Jara had picked them up. She put them together, and the child suddenly came to life with a roar. Jara returned the baby to the king, who named him Jarāsandha, or one who was joined by Jara. Krishna added, The time has now come to destroy this Jarāsandha. Without a doubt, Bhima will defeat him in single combat. Jarasandha will not refuse to fight. Therefore, O king, grant us permission to depart. Yudhishthira assented to Krishna's desire. Seeing your mind set upon this purpose, O Keshava, I consider Jarasandha already killed and all the imprisoned kings released. You will certainly lead Bhima and Arjun to victory over that evil monarch. O Krishna, what cannot be accomplished by one who has you on his side or as his guide? One who has you as his guide. The three heroes decided to set off immediately. They dressed themselves as Snatakas, students just finishing their education and seeking charity. That's Snataka, right? After graduation, they're called Snatakas. And seeking charity. Leaving Indraprastha, they resembled the sun, the moon, and the fire god joined together. Their wrath toward Jarasandha inflamed, their bodies appeared to blaze. When the people saw the three of them resolutely heading out, they considered Jarasandha already killed. They traveled east for many days. At last they came to the Goratha hill, from where they could see Jarasandha's capital, Girivraja. Sitting amid forest land, the city was beautiful with its lakes and grazing cattle. Fine mansions and palaces shone from the city center, and 5 large hills covered with blossoming trees surrounded it. Krishna told the two Pandavas that this region had long ago been developed by Manu himself, the father of mankind. The largest of the 5 hills, Chaityaka, protected the city's main gate. The three heroes ascended this hill and began to tear down its peak with their bare hands. They hurled boulders and created a landslide. At the foot of the hill was a massive drum made from the skin of a Rakshasa that Jarasandha had slain. Having been struck once, the drum would vibrate for a full month, and Jarasandha had it continually sounded to warn anyone who even thought of attacking the city. Arjuna and Krishna smashed the drum to pieces. Climbing down the hill, they clambered over the wall surrounding the city to gain entrance. The guards stood back in surprise as the three apparent Brahmins made their unusual entrance, climbing on the wall and entering. Bhima led them along the streets toward the king's palace. They saw numerous attractive, well stocked shops. As they walked past the flower vendors, they snatched garlands and put them on. They strode into Jarasandha's palace and made their way to the central courtyard where the king was performing a sacrifice. Girivraja's learned Brahmins had been witnessing fearful omens portending calamity. Thus, they had advised the king to fast and to perform sacrifice to ward off evil. As Jarasandha sat before the blazing fire, he saw 3 powerful men dressed as Snatakas and adorned with garlands approaching him. Accepting them as Brahmins, he immediately rose to greet them, saying, "You are welcome." Krishna told the king that his 2 friends were observing a vow and would not speak until midnight. At that time, they would tell him the purpose of their visit. Krishna knew that the king had himself made a vow that he would give to any Brahmin whatever he asked, even if he came at midnight. Jarasandha had them quartered in his palace and said he would visit them at midnight. That night, Jarasandha entered their room and worshipped his 3 guests with proper ceremonies, offering them gifts of milk-bearing cows. But his guests refused his worship and gifts. Krishna said, "O king, we have come seeking a special kind of charity from you who are famous for giving the Brahmins whatever they want. For a great man, there is no charity that cannot be given. Even the body may be sacrificed for a proper cause. Therefore, please grant us our request." Jarasandha looked at them closely. With their colorful robes and bright garlands, they did not look like any Brahmins he had ever seen. But as they had come to him in that guise and were asking charity, he could not refuse. He said, "I will give you whatever you may ask. However, you 3 do not appear to be Brahmins. Dressed as you are and decorated with flowers, your long arms, smeared with fragrant sandal paste, resemble tree trunks. Your hands carry scars from a bowstring. You tore down the peak of the Chaityaka hill and entered the city as enemies do, avoiding the gate. You have also refused my worship. Such behavior befits an enemy. I think you are Kshatriyas. Tell me honestly, for truth is the ornament even of kings. Krishna returned the king's icy stare with a smile. Your observations are accurate. We are not Brahmins. The Snataka vow may be followed by Kshatriyas as well as Brahmins, right? So they're dressed as Snataka Even the Kshatriyas go to Gurukul to study, and they have a period when they are living under the Gurukul, and after that, when they graduate, they come out and they're dressed like that. So they're still dressed as brahmacharis, like students, but they're actually Kshatriyas. So it's not that they're actually cheating anyone. So Krishna is saying that the Snataka vow may be followed by Kshatriyas as well as Brahmins, and you have surmised correctly that we are enemies. Thus, we have entered your city violently and declined your worship. We have come to beg from you a duel. Jarasandha was surprised. I do not recall ever having done you any harm. Indeed, I am innocent of any crime. One who assails an innocent man receives sinful reactions which will send him to hell. I always observe the duties of my order, protecting the people and rendering them no harm. Why then do you see me as an enemy? Angry Krishna replied, O king, we represent one who desires to uphold the dignity of the royal line and establish religion throughout the world. How do you consider yourself religious when you have imprisoned so many kings? You even intend to offer them as human sacrifices to Rudra, to treat these kings as if they were beasts? Who could do such a thing except someone as sinful as yourself? You will surely reap the results of your sinful acts, for the law of karma is infallible. Although you consider yourself without an equal, we will soon crush your pride. We wish to free the captive kings. Know me to be Krishna, and these two to be Bhima and Arjuna. Follow now your Kshatriya duty and fight with us today. Either free the kings or go to Yamaraja's abode. Jarasandha laughed. I should have guessed. My old enemy Krishna come in disguise to try to kill me after failing so many times. What sin have I committed by capturing kings for Shiva's pleasure? I defeated all of them fairly in battle. Therefore, it is my prerogative to do with them whatever I please. I will not release them out of fear of you or these other two. I will fight, either by placing my troops in battle array or by standing alone against the three of you. Or, if you prefer, I will fight whichever one of you most desires death at my hands. Krishna looked at his two friends. It is your choice, Jarasandha. Select any one of us for single combat and let that settle our dispute. Jarasandha preferred to fight with Bhima. He considered Krishna and Arjuna no match for his strength. Only Bhima seemed powerful enough. Bhima smiled grimly and clenched his fists. He furrowed his eyebrows and glared at Jarasandha. They agreed to meet at sunrise, and the king left to make preparations for the fight. Jarasandha had Brahmins utter auspicious Vedic hymns over him, and he smeared his body with sacred unguents that had been offered to the gods. He then placed his son upon the throne, in case he didn't return. He placed his son upon the throne and bound his hair in a tight knot. Removing his royal robes, he donned only a loin cloth. As the sun rose, he went out of the city along with Bhima, for whom Krishna had performed the propitiatory ceremonies to invoke the gods. The king had two massive clubs fetched from his armory. The two fighters took hold of the clubs and entered a large roped-off arena just outside the city gates. They appeared like two mighty lions staring at each other in fury. At a signal given by a Brahmin, they rushed at each other, shaking the earth with their steps. The two powerful heroes roared as they came together. They each swung huge blows, creating fearful sounds and a shower of sparks as their maces met. Wheeling and dodging, they resembled two dancers on a stage. Onlookers were dazzled by their expertise with the club. They smashed one another with all their strength, but neither gave way. Each was as powerful as 10,000 elephants, and they merely laughed as the mace struck them. Soon both clubs were shattered, and they threw them aside, continuing the fight with their bare hands. They seized each other's necks and dragged one another around the arena. Each looked for an opportunity to throw his opponent down. Bhima grabbed his enemy and tried to crush him with his arms. Jarasandha broke free and swung out his leg, trying to unbalance Bhima. Sometimes they raised their arms, sometimes dropped them, and sometimes held them close, lifting their fists, then aiming blows at particular parts of their opponent's body, and then suddenly brought them down somewhere else. The arena resounded with their shouts and the sounds of their slaps and punches. Both were expert wrestlers, and again they exhibited many wonderful movements. They clasped each other's arms and waists and pressed with great force. Roaring like clouds, they fought relentlessly like a pair of maddened elephants. By now, a large crowd had formed around the arena. Citizens of every class came to see the fight, and they gasped in astonishment as the two men grappled. The sound coming from the arena resembled claps of thunder or a falling cliff. The earth shook violently as they rolled about, locked together. Neither showed any sign of fatigue as the fight continued throughout the day and up until sunset. As darkness fell, the fight was stopped until the next morning. Jarasandha invited Bhima and his two friends back to his palace and entertained them as honored guests. Even though they were enemies, Jarasandha felt duty bound to respect them. The next morning, the fight resumed. Again, it continued for the entire day without either fighter gaining an advantage. And as evening fell, they again returned to the king's palace. The fight went on for 28 days. Bhima began to feel it would never end. There seemed to be no way to overpower Jarasandha. The king too felt respect for his opponent. Jarasandha had never before been equaled in single combat, but it appeared that the Pandava was invincible. On the 28th day, Krishna considered how Bhima might end the fight. Since Jarasandha had been joined at birth by the Rakshasi, Krishna knew that he would be weak along that join. Bhima should tear him in two. When Bhima was able to see him, Krishna picked up a twig and split it right down the middle. Bhima took the hint. Finding an opportunity, he threw Jarasandha to the ground and stood on one of his legs. He then took hold of the other leg and pushed it forward. With a tremendous roar, he tore Jarasandha in two from the anus to the head. The king died with a scream that echoed throughout his entire city. The citizens were shocked by the cry and they rushed to see what had happened. They found Bhima standing over the two halves of the slain monarch. As all the citizens cried out, "Alas!" Krishna and Arjuna came forward to embrace Bhima. The three of them then went back to the city and ordered Jarasandha's son Jayatsena to release the imprisoned kings from the mountain fortress where they were held. Yeah, Jarasandha's son is Sahadev, but here it is said Jayatsena. Maybe it's another son, I don't know. Yeah. The kings came down to the city and offered their respects and worship to Krishna. As Krishna and the two Pandavas sat within Jarasandha's palace, all of the many thousands of captive kings bowed before them. On behalf of all of them, one king addressed Krishna. "My lord, we can understand that our sufferings at Jarasandha's hands is the result of our own past sinful activities. We can now realize that Jarasandha's humiliation of us was actually providential, for it has forced us to give up our false prestige. We were proud of our strength and positions, and we simply engaged in fighting other kings for supremacy and wealth, thereby causing the death of so many people. Now we are in a helpless and wretched condition and can only depend upon you. This is our great fortune." Krishna accepted their worship and arranged for them to be given food and clothing. He then told them to return to their kingdoms and accept Yudhisthira as the world's emperor. Soon the Pandavas would perform the Rajasuya sacrifice and they should all attend. Jayatsena also agreed to accept Yudhishthira's authority, and after being properly installed by Krishna as the king of Magadha, so Jayatsena is made the king, he arranged transport back to Indraprastha for Krishna and the Pandavas. Maybe it's the other name of the same person. That's another possibility, Sahadev or Jayatsena. So he became the king of Magadha, arranged transport back to Indraprastha for Krishna and the Pandavas. Upon their arrival, Krishna went to Yudhisthira and said, O best of kings, by good fortune, Jarāsandha has been killed and the imprisoned kings freed. Both Bhima and Arjuna are unharmed. Yudhisthira joyfully embraced his two younger brothers and Krishna. By your grace, dear Krishna, anything can be achieved, he said. Indeed, it is only by your power that anyone else can exhibit power. We are kings and rulers only as long as you permit. Yet, although you are the unlimited supreme, devoid of mundane desire and hatred, you still appear as an ordinary human being. Krishna smiled and asked Yudhishthir for permission to depart. Krishna comes and goes. Yudhishthir then set a date to begin the Rajasuya, and Krishna agreed to return at that time. First, however, the Pandavas would have to subjugate the other monarchs of the earth. Having bade farewell to Kunti and Draupadi, Krishna mounted his chariot and headed back to Dwaraka. After Krishna had departed, Arjuna said to Yudhishthir, O king, I possess the Gandiva bow and inexhaustible quivers of arrows, as well as the prowess to use them in your service. I would like to go out and make the kings of the world pay you tribute. Allow me to go north and conquer all those kingdoms. Yudhishthir replied, You have my permission, O Dhananjaya. Leave on an auspicious day after gaining the Brahman's blessings. You will doubtlessly gain victory over all. Arjun gathered a large number of troops and soon left for the north. Bhima, surrounded by a similar number of men, went east, while Sahadev went south and Nakula west. Yudhishthir was thrilled at the prospect of soon being able to perform the Rajasuya. So many things would thus be achieved. His noble father would be raised to the highest heaven, the world would be placed firmly on the path of religion, and most of all, Krishna would be honored above all others as the supreme person. Soon the king was consulting with Dhaumya and the other exalted Brahmins in his kingdom as to the preparations for the sacrifice, and Vyasdev arrived to further advise the king. So with that, we end today's session. Hare Krishna. So tomorrow we'll read about... Oh, Rasapriya has a question. Okay, go ahead.
Why did someone Krishna and Arjuna ask like fight at midnight?
Oh, why only at midnight? From what we read, Jarāsandha, it said there, right? That Jarāsandha's vow is that he will not refuse a Brahman charity even if he came at midnight. So they were asking at midnight. It's just like, to make his word come true. But also, he himself was doing a sacrifice. So generally, when you do a sacrifice, you are observing a vow of silence. Remember in Ramayana, we saw Vishwamitra Muni was also performing a sacrifice, so he had to observe a vow of silence. So Krishna said, that's what is said, we read. Krishna, understanding, knowing that Jarasandha is himself performing a sacrifice, Krishna said, my friends are, observing a vrata, so they will only speak to you at midnight, like that. Yeah, other than that, I don't know any specific reason. Maybe there is, I don't know. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. So we will end it here. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.